Hello and welcome to this Stormshield presentation. Today we will discuss improvements on the Stormshield Network Security RMA process. The first part of this presentation will be from a customer's perspective. We will unfold the RMA request process to highlight the changes to following up on a RMA and validating one. We will also see the additional information you can get out of the RMA documents. Then we will move on to a second part of this presentation that will be dedicated to Platinum partners as well as Support Center. We will see how this improvement will change the way to authorize the RMA. So first, let's log in to our My Stormshield account. In order to request a RMA, we must open a case to the Stormshield support team. So let's click on Manage Cases, create a new case, and select the faulty appliance. So here is the ticket creation form. First, we must fill in the product version. The second field is a very important one. It is the incident type. When requesting a RMA, you must choose the hardware failure type. Here is the first change from this improved RMA process. You can see that two new fields appeared, validators and followers. If you ever requested a RMA to the Stormshield support team, you probably know that in order to start the RMA process, it must be validated by the customer to whom the appliance is registered. In order to bring you more flexibility, you can now select validators who will also be able to perform that action. So for example, if you are a partner and you are managing all cases for your customer and you want to handle the RMA from beginning to end, you can add your own email address to the validators list, and you will receive email all along the RMA process, including a validation link. So you will not need to ask anything from your customer. Here we will leave the default email address from my account to show you the rest of the process. It is also possible to add followers. Followers will also receive email updates all along the process. However, they will not be able to perform any action, such as validating the RMA, for example. So let's add a follower email address. When requesting an RMA, you do not need to have a follower. However, it is mandatory to have at least one validator. Another thing to note is that, as you probably noticed earlier, when selecting another incident type that hardware failure, these fields do not appear. So if you first open a case that is not suspected to be a hardware failure, but the diagnosis leads toward that possibility later on, you can provide the support team with your validators and followers' email addresses through the content of the ticket, and the support technician will add this validator and follower information to any RMA he may create. We will now wait for an answer from the support technician. So later on, the support technician has authorized the RMA. Here is an example of the emails the validator received following that operation. As you can see, it includes a link to validate the exchange. We will do that in just a minute, but before that, I would like to show you the other emails that were sent during this process. The first one was sent to the follower. As you can see, it informs the follower that the RMA is currently waiting for validation. But there is no link to validate it, as followers cannot perform this operation. The last email was not sent to the follower or validator. It was instead sent to the customer to whom the product belongs, to inform him that RMA has been started. It also gives him a contact phone number in case you would want to oppose this RMA procedure. Let's now go back to the email received by the validator. So we will now validate our RMA using the link received. So here is the validation form for our RMA. As you can see, it looks very similar to the old validation form that you had in your customer area on mystormshield.eu. Let's start by selecting our network configuration. Even if this is similar, there is still one change to this page. It is linked with 48 volts power supplies for SN6000 and 3000. If your product has the 48 volt option, you have to fill it in the field at the end of the page. We'll do it in this case. Let's move on to the next step. Since we selected the fiber card option, we also must select transceivers that are linked with these cards. So let's select some transceivers right now. Let's move on to the next step of the process. This is the last page of the RMA validation process. There you must select the address to which the replacement unit will be shipped. So let's fill in this form. Now that it is filled up, let's validate the RMA. The RMA is now validated. So we received a new email update, of course, as with each step of this process. So let's see the RMA document that we received. So here is the email we received after validating the process. Let's have a look at the attachment. So here is an example of RMA document. You can see that it looks very similar to the old RMA documents. However, there are two changes I would like to point out. The first one is the field exchange part. This field tells you if we are exchanging the whole unit or, for example, just the power supply or a network card. The second one is just below, accessories. It will tell you all accessories that will be exchanged with the product. So, for example, during the validation, we filled in that our product had 3 network cards, 1 copper and 2 fiber. So we can see these cards there. We can also see our 48 volt power supply option, as well as our transceivers. So these updated documents allow you to know exactly what is exchanged during a RMA. Before we move on to the partner part, there is one last thing I would like to show you. So we are now back in our My Stormshield account. Let's see what the follow-up on exchange page tells us for this RMA. As you can see, there is one difference compared to the page you could see before these improvements, which is that the validators and followers list are here. What's important here is that you can edit these lists at any point during the RMA, and the validator and followers lists will be taken into account for all mails sent afterwards. Another useful thing is that you can reset the current status by email. So for example, if you didn't receive your validation email, you can just click the send email button and the last email that was sent will be resent to all validators and followers. That's it for the customer part. Now let's have a look at the RMA authorization from a Platinum Partner or Support Center point of view. So we are now back to our follow-up on Exchange page, from which we will create a new RMA. So let's click on Proceed to a new exchange. Select the faulty appliance. If you are familiar with the current state of this auto-diagnosis page, you probably are noticing a few changes right now. The previous version had many questions in order to orient the diagnosis. We have decided to make this page a lot simpler by just allowing you to choose the part that should be exchanged. Of course, if you have any doubt about the diagnosis, you can contact Stormshield technical support in order to receive assistance. So in this case, we will just perform network card exchange. Another thing I would like to point out is the Add My Own Addresses to Selectable Addresses for RMA validation, which I will check right now. A few minutes ago, when we validated our RMA, you probably saw a button allowing you to automatically fill the address based on my contact address. Some partners manage the whole RMA process from beginning to end instead of a customer, so they prefer to receive the appliance at their address instead of sending it directly to the customer. If you check this option, when validating a RMA and entering your address, you will have the option to automatically fill the delivery address with the partner's ones instead of the customer's. I will show you this point later on when validating this RMA. So let's authorize our RMA here. So the RMA is created. As I mentioned earlier, in the RMA follow-up, the customer is still able to validate the RMA by clicking the validation link, but it is now also the case for the partner if he creates the RMA. So we will use this link right now. So here is the validation form again. This time, since we are performing the exchange of a network card, we only have one field to fill in. So we are back to the address selection menu. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, you can use the customer default address to fill in the delivery address. But since we allow the partner's address to be used, we can also unfold this menu and use the claimant address. So the claimant is the person who requests the RMA, so in this case the partner. So if we click this button and click same as contact address, it is the claimant's address that is used. So apart from this delivery option, the process is the same for RMAs created by Stormshield technical support or by partners, in the sense that there is also the full follow-up by email sent to the validators. So both processes evolved the same way. So that's it for this RMA. We'll now validate it. So that's it for specific changes to partners. That's it for this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope these changes will help you while managing your RMAs.